Hey friends, welcome back to the next video. Now this time we're gonna dive again into the cumulative sales, but also how to apply it for the prior year. So what if we want to shift basically our accumulation, so running total, 1 year back for instance, or a different kind of time period back. So how do we do this? Well, let's actually first rename this as a ranking, and then let me actually click on a new page here and let's practice time intelligence. Create a few more measures. So first, let me actually right click on the measures table and create new measure. And this will be our cumulative sales. So this is something we can practice because we have done this before. So we can rehearse it now. Let's say these are our cumulative sales. So I call it cum sales. Of course, you can call it also running total or any other kind of name you want to give it. So how to do this? Remember, we want to change any kind of filter context we have with cumulative sales. Because, for instance, in February 2020 or 21, we don't want to show only the data for February. We want to see the data before as well. And to do this, we need to modify, of course, the context. And the context modification for a measure always is calculate. So calculate, then the expression is the total sales. Here we go. And then our modifier will be, in this case, that the dates should be less or equal to the maximum date. Meaning, to avoid any kind of filter from the visual, we use the all selected function again, all selected. Then we are referring to the dates table and then the date column. And we make sure that this year is less or equal to the maximum. And to do this, we will use a filter expression. So we say filter. And now all selected dates table date. And in this case, this is the dates table date. So the last one here is less or equal to the maximum of the dates table date. So let me just select it from here and we can close this. We can close this and we can also close the calculate function and we are good to go. Just of course, Control A to copy everything. I will go to my formatting, my little helper here. I paste this inside, go to format, and then I will copy this from here. So this is something we have done already with the last data set. So you're probably familiar with that, but let's actually evaluate it first and let's have a look at the formula again. So I will use a table. So I'll go from my dates table here, using the date here, my hierarchy, and also remove the day and the quarter because I only want to see this on a monthly level. Make this bigger in here and also increase the size. Go on size to the values and set it to, let's say, 14. Okay. Now we want to add also the sales. So go with total sales in here. Okay. And now let's check whether our cumulative sales is calculating correct. Take this option and we see that it is correct. So here we got the sum of the first 2 entries, here the sum of the first 3 entries, and so on. Up to the total amount, which is 1.35 million, which is exactly the same amount as here. So this is fine, right? Maybe we want to wrap it so that this will not go to December. This is something or a trick we have used in the past. So something we could adjust, but there's also another way to do it. And let me show you this. Let's go to the cumulative sales, to the measure itself. And again, to understand it, we covered this extensively in another video, but let's cover it briefly again, just so it's easier to rehearse and to learn. We calculate the total sales. In our case, it could be another measure as well, but we will use the total sales. We make sure that the current filter context, which is each row in a table, or in a bar chart, it would be each bar of the visual, depending on the chart you use. But we want to avoid using this current context. Instead, we want to filter with all selected, so complete dates table. So meaning we remove all the dates which are filtered in here. Instead, we use the complete dates table. And here we could also use the all function. So all selected could be one function. All function would be alternative, could also be used. Gives you the same result. And at least in the current context. So, and then the dates table date, which is coming from the complete dates table, should be less or equal to the maximum dates table date, which again is referring outside again to the current filter context. And everything less or equal to April 2022 is then of course summed up, and this is its value. That's how that works. Now, we have learned that we could say, instead of using the formula like that, we can wrap this in an if condition and simply check whether there are total sales. For instance, in May, this is true, and only then we want to calculate the running total. Meaning that if we use an if condition here and check that and otherwise show blank, we get rid of those repeating values to the end of the year. This is true. The other option, which we can also do and leverage, is we can change actually what we are referring here. Because remember, when we create the dates table in our model, we create the dates table in a way that it covers all the years up to the end of the last year of sales. We also know that in this case, the dataset ends in May because the order date is only up to May 2022. So further, there are no sales yet. This is the future in this specific case. So this is why we could say, instead of the dates table here, simply refer to the maximum of the orders table and there the order date. Because the maximum of the order date is actually here, I think the last sales day in May. I'm currently not sure which day exactly it is. I think it's the 8th or 7th of May. I'm not sure, but it's referring now to the May data. And that means if we evaluate the expression like that, we could exactly get the same result as using the if condition and check for blanks. And let me show it to you. Let me evaluate that, and let's see what happens to this repeating pattern up here in the table. Press enter. And now we see, just a second, there we go. And May is now the last day, right? So now you can't scroll any down, and the pattern is not repeating. Because now we only make sure that it should be less or equal to, in this case, the order date. So we can get rid of the blanks like this as well. So this would be another way. Okay, so this is the cumulative sales for the period we have here. And what if we would like to calculate something like the cumulative sales, but shifted 1 year? How can we do this? Well, this works exactly the same way. So let's actually do that. First, we create a new measure, set the new measure in here. Okay. This will be our total sales last year, ly, is equal to, and we say we want to calculate. The expression will be, in my case, the total sales. This is what I'm going to use. And for the filter, I will use the dateAdd function. So we already learned the same period last year function and also the dateAdd function. And we also experienced that the dateAdd function is more flexible. That's why I actually almost only use the dateAdd function. So type in dateAdd or use same period last year. It's up to you. And then for the dates, I'm referring to the dates table, the date column. So the most important column in the dates table, this one here with the continuous date range. And then I specify here, a comma here, the number of intervals will be -1. And the interval in my case will be simply, in this case, the year level. Let's go with year, okay? Like that. Close the parenthesis and maybe also close the calculate function. And to format, simply press Shift Enter in front of the calculate function, and then we value that. Okay, so we got the total sales last year. And of course, if we take a look at that, I also increase the table size here, add the total sales last year to it, we see that now this is shifted 1 year, like we have already experienced in another video. And now, all we need to do in order to calculate the cumulative sum or cumulative sales regarding the shifted year is actually only take a look at the cumulative sales formula, and then we can simply Control-A to copy everything, Control-C to copy, and then we create a new measure, right-click on the measures table, new measure, and then we simply paste the formula inside. We just need to be aware that we can't name the same measure twice, or give the same name twice, but this is cumulative sales last year, so type in ly. And instead of referring to the total sales here, I can simply now refer to a different measure. And in our case, it would be total sales, and then of course from the prior year, which is the last year here, this one. And that's it. The formula itself is exactly the same beside this, but now we use here the last year formula and a measure for that to evaluate that. And now if I press enter, of course, like that, we could now take a look at this cumulative sales last year. Let me tick this option. And then you see here, we got exactly the same behavior here. We get started here with this value, and then we add up the values up there. So one important thing to see or to understand here is the following. So if you take a closer look, you see that, for instance, here, this value is exactly the same as this value. That's fine. Now for the running sales, you can see now this value here, the 64,000 and so on. This is different from the cumulative sales from August 20 here. But the 99,000 and so on, this again is exactly the same. And the same is true for a few others. Like this one is the same. 201,000 is different from 203,000, right? Considering the running total. So what happens actually? Why is that happening? Well, here the issue is actually that we have modified our cumulative sales, or in this case actually our date add function, because we said we want to have it less or equal to the maximum order date. And here is exactly an issue which might occur if you're not referring to the dates table. Remember, the orders date on the orders table does not contain any or not contain necessary order dates. And because of that, time intelligence can lead to different results. And this is happening here because this value is not the same as this value. The reason to make sure that the values are identical is to simply go into the cumulative sales last year, and if you replace the orders date here with the original date here, let me just copy this and paste this inside, you'll see that if we take a closer look to here, 64,000 and so on, but now if we evaluate this one, press enter, you see that now we got 66,000 and so on, which is exactly the same value as August here in 2020. And now the values are exactly identical as we have here. So this is an important lesson to understand. So when you are referring and dealing with time intelligence functions, then most often you want to use, actually in 99% probably of the cases, you want to use only the dates column from the dates table, because this is a continuous date range and this makes sure that the time intelligence function is correct. Okay? So important to understand that lesson. So that's it actually for the cumulative sales. So the main goal here was really to understand that when you create any kind of time intelligence functions, like in our case it was cumulative sales in here, in order to modify this, to evaluate this for a different kind of measure, so may it be total profit, total cost, or also another time intelligence functions, like the last year, for instance, sales last year, all we have to do is simply replace the specific measure we have here in the calculate function with another measure to get the result we want. And this is exactly what we've done here. So we simply went here and used a measure here as total sales last year instead. Okay, so this is the first important lesson, that you can quite easy actually modify any kind of maybe more specified time intelligence function by simply replacing the measure. And the second key takeaway from here is really that if you're dealing with time intelligence, you most often want to make sure that you actually use the dates table you're referring to, because then you can be sure that the time intelligence function is working correctly and it's giving you the correct results. Okay, so that's it actually for this video. So thanks a lot for watching, and as always, hopefully see you in the next video. Until then, best guys.